Alright, let's dive a little deeper into this 1979 Chrysler 300, shall we? One of the things that really stands out to me about this car is the full gauge package. You've got all the essentials, including a tachometer, which is a nice touch for those who like to keep a close eye on their engine's performance. And get this, the clock actually works. That might sound like a small detail, but it's a testament to the care and attention this car has received over the years. Moving on to the interior, you'll find bucket seats and a console, which give the car a sporty, driver-focused vibe. It's the kind of setup that makes you want to hop in and take this baby for a spin. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what about the gas mileage? And that's a fair point. With a 360 V8 engine under the hood, this car is probably not going to be the most fuel-efficient ride out there. But let's be real. If you're in the market for a classic car like this, you're probably not too worried about pinching pennies at the pump. One thing to keep in mind is that while the seller says the car is in good condition, they don't provide a ton of details beyond that. It's always a good idea to ask for more specifics, like whether there are any known mechanical issues or if the car has been in any accidents. At the end of the day, buying a classic car is all about finding the right balance of style, performance, and condition. And from where I'm standing, this 1979 Chrysler 300 looks like it could be a real gem for the right buyer. Just remember to do your due diligence. Ask plenty of questions, and maybe even bring along a trusted mechanic to give it a once-over before you make any big decisions. But if everything checks out and you're ready to make this beauty your own, I say go for it. Life's too short to drive boring cars, and this Chrysler 300 is anything but boring. 2. We're taking a closer look at a real diamond in the rough, a 1975 Cadillac Eldorado convertible that's up for grabs on Craigslist. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, this car is definitely a project. The seller even admits it in the ad, saying it needs restoration. But if you're the type who loves a good challenge and has a soft spot for classic American luxury, this could be the ride for you. First things first, let's talk about that price tag. The seller is asking $5,900 for this Eldorado, which might seem a bit steep for a car that needs work. But when you consider the potential of this vehicle, it starts to make a little more sense. Under the hood, you'll find a big V8 engine that the seller says is running. That's a good sign, but it's worth noting that the car has been sitting in a garage for over 15 years. The seller mentions that they've changed the fluids and put in a new water pump, but there's no telling what other issues might pop up after such a long period of inactivity. The odometer shows just 35,145 miles, which is incredibly low for a car of this age. However, the seller does mention that the odometer has rolled over, so the actual mileage is likely much higher. One of the biggest selling points of this Eldorado is the fact that it's a convertible. There's just something about cruising down the road in a classic drop top that never gets old. The seller says the power convertible top is working, which is a big plus. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the condition. The seller rates it as fair, which is a bit of a red flag. They mention that the air conditioning isn't working and that the car needs restoration in general. It's clear that this Eldorado is going to need some serious TLC to get it back to its former glory. But here's the thing, if you're up for the challenge, this car could be an incredibly rewarding project. The bright red paint job is a classic look for a Cadillac, and with some elbow grease and a bit of cash, you could have a real head turner on your hands. The seller is willing to consider trades for a newer car of equal value, which could be an option if you've got something to offer. They also mention financing for well-qualified buyers, which could make this project a little more attainable. At the end of the day, this 1975 Cadillac Eldorado convertible is not for the faint of heart. It's going to take some work to get it back in top shape. But if you've got the skills, the time, and the passion for classic cars, it could be an incredibly rewarding project. As always, be sure to do your due diligence before making any big decisions. Get a thorough inspection ask plenty of questions, and be realistic about what you're getting into. 3. We're diving into a real piece of American muscle car history, a 1969 Mercury Marauder that's up for grabs on Craigslist. Now, before we get too excited, let's address the elephant in the room. The seller rates the condition of this car as fair, which is a polite way of saying it's got some issues. They mention rust, worn suspension bushings, and age-related concerns with the brake lines. So, if you're looking for a pristine, show-ready classic, this might not be the car for you. But if you're the type who sees potential where others see problems, then this Marauder could be a real diamond in the rough. The seller mentions that it's a survivor, meaning it's largely original and unrestored. In the world of classic cars, that can be a big selling point. Under the hood, you'll find a 390 cubic inch V8 engine with a 2-barrel carburetor, paired with a C6 automatic transmission. The seller has made some recent upgrades, including a new starter, water pump, and fuel system components. They've also done some basic maintenance like replacing the spark plugs, wires, and ignition components. One of the coolest features of this Marauder is the hideaway headlights. The seller says they're working, which is a big plus. The heat and defrost are also functional, which is important if you plan on driving this car in less than ideal weather. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $7,500 for this Marauder, which might seem a bit high considering the condition. But it's important to remember that you're paying for potential here. With some elbow grease and a bit of cash, this car could be a real head-turner. The seller seems open to trades, particularly for a motorcycle. So, if you've got a bike collecting dust in your garage, this could be your chance to swap it for a classic piece of American muscle. Overall, this 1969 Mercury Marauder is not for the faint of heart. It's going to need some work to get it back to its former glory. But if you're up for the challenge and have a vision for what this car could be, it could be an incredibly rewarding project. As always, be sure to do your due diligence before making any big decisions. Get a thorough inspection, ask plenty of questions, and be realistic about what you're getting into. 4. We've got a real treat for you. A 1976 Chevrolet Malibu that's up for grabs on Craigslist. And let me tell you, this is not your average classic car. First things first, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as excellent, and based on the description, I'm inclined to believe them. With just over 40,000 original miles on the odometer, this Malibu has been pampered over the years. That's the kind of low mileage that collectors dream about. Under the hood, you'll find a 305 cubic inch V8 engine. Now, the seller is upfront about the fact that this isn't a hot rod, but that's okay because not every classic car needs to be a tire shredding monster. This Malibu is more of a highway cruiser, the kind of car you can take on long road trips without worrying about reliability. The seller has made some nice upgrades to the engine too. They've added a new Edelbrock AVS 4-barrel carburetor, which should help with throttle response and overall performance. They've also installed a new Flowmaster dual exhaust system, which I'm sure sounds absolutely fantastic. But the upgrades don't stop there. The seller mentions fresh paint, which is always a big plus on a classic car. The color is a beautiful shade of red that really pops in the sunlight. And with new tires all around, this Malibu should handle like a dream on the road. Now let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $12,000 for this Malibu, which might seem a bit steep at first glance. But when you consider the low mileage, excellent condition, and recent upgrades, it starts to make a lot more sense. This is the kind of car that you could buy today and enjoy for years to come without worrying about major repairs or restoration work. The seller does mention that they're going a different direction in life, which is why they're letting this Malibu go. And while that's a shame for them, it could be a big opportunity for you. Overall, this 1976 Chevrolet Malibu seems like a fantastic classic car that's ready to hit the road. With its low mileage, excellent condition, and recent upgrades, it's the kind of car that you could proudly show off at your local car meet or take on a cross-country road trip. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this Malibu seems like a real winner. So if you're in the market for a classic American car with plenty of style and a bit of grunt under the hood, this 1976 Chevrolet Malibu might just be the perfect choice. Don't miss out on this opportunity to own a piece of automotive history. 5. We're taking a closer look at a 1980 Pontiac Firebird that's up for sale on Craigslist. Now, before we dive in, let's address the elephant in the room. This car is not in perfect condition. The seller rates it as fair, which means it's going to need some work to get it back to its former glory. But here's the thing, if you're a fan of the Firebird, and really, who isn't, then this car might just be the perfect project for you. The seller mentions that it's all or mostly original, which is a big plus in the world of classic cars. Original parts and components can be hard to come by, so having a largely untouched Firebird is a great starting point for a restoration. Now let's talk about the specifics. This Firebird is a Formula model, which means it's got some sporty upgrades over the base model. Under the hood, you'll find a V8 engine that's sure to provide plenty of power and that classic muscle car sound. The transmission is an automatic, which might not be the enthusiast's choice, but it does make this car a bit more accessible for daily driving. The exterior of the car is finished in a brown color with gold trim, a classic look for the late 70s and early 80s. The paint is likely going to need some attention, but that's to be expected on a car that's over 40 years old. Inside, the seller doesn't provide too many details, but based on the age and condition of the car, it's safe to assume that the interior will need some work as well. The odometer shows just under 100,000 miles, which is relatively low for a car of this age. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $12 on $100 for this Firebird, which might seem a bit steep for a car that needs restoration. But it's important to remember that you're paying for potential here. With some time, money, and elbow grease, this Firebird could be a real head-turner. Of course, as with any project car, it's important to do your due diligence before making a purchase. Get a thorough inspection, ask plenty of questions, and be realistic about the amount of work and money it's going to take to get this car back in top shape. But if you're up for the challenge and have a soft spot for classic American muscle, this 1980 Pontiac Firebird Formula could be the perfect project for you. It's a chance to own a piece of automotive history and put your own spin on a beloved classic. 6. We've got a real blast from the past for you, a 1975 Chevrolet Nova that's looking for a new home. This classic hatchback is up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's got some serious potential. First off, can we talk about that mileage? Just 75,200 on the original engine and transmission. That's practically unheard of for a car that's almost 50 years old. It's clear that this Nova has been well cared for over the years, and that's a huge plus in my book. Now, the seller does mention that the interior shows some wear, with a tear in the bench seat. But honestly, that's to be expected on a car of this age. A little bit of wear and tear just adds to the charm, if you ask me. And besides, reupholstering a bench seat is a relatively easy fix if you're handy with a sewing machine. Under the hood, you'll find a classic V8 engine that's sure to provide plenty of power and that signature muscle car rumble. The seller has recently installed a new alternator, so you won't have to worry about any electrical gremlins popping up. And with a chrome dual exhaust system, this Nova is going to sound as good as it looks. Speaking of looks, the seller mentions that the paint is a custom color. Now, they don't provide any photos, so we'll have to use our imagination a bit here. But I'm picturing a sleek, eye-catching hue that really makes this Nova stand out from the crowd. Inside, you'll find a basic sound system. Nothing too fancy, but enough to keep you entertained on those long drives. And with a bench seat up front, you can fit plenty of friends or family members along for the ride. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $11,500 for this Nova, which might seem a bit steep at first glance. But when you consider the low mileage, the recent upgrades, and the overall potential of this car, it starts to make a lot more sense. This is the kind of classic that you could enjoy as a weekend cruiser or even a daily driver with a little bit of work. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. And if you're not located in the Los Angeles area, you'll need to factor in the cost of transportation as well. But overall, this 1975 Chevrolet Nova seems like a fantastic opportunity for anyone who loves classic American muscle. With its low mileage, recent upgrades, and plenty of potential, it's the kind of car that you could enjoy for years to come. 7. We've got an absolute gem for you, a stunning 1964 Mercury Monterey Breezeway that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. This classic beauty is up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's got me drooling. First off, can we talk about the condition of this car? The seller rates it as excellent, and based on the description, I'm inclined to believe them. The Monterey has been completely restored from top to bottom, with a rebuilt original V8 390 engine that's only got 3,000 miles on it. That's practically brand new in classic car terms. The exterior of the car has been treated to a fresh coat of paint that looks absolutely stunning. The seller doesn't specify the color, but I'm imagining a deep, glossy hue that perfectly complements the Monterey's classic lines. And with no rust to speak of, you can be sure that this car is as solid as they come. Inside, the upholstery has been completely redone as well. Again, the seller doesn't provide many details, but I'm picturing a plush, comfortable interior that's just begging for you to sink into it. And with the Monterey's spacious cabin, you'll have plenty of room to stretch out and enjoy the ride. But the real star of the show here is the Breezeway rear window. This unique feature allows the back window to retract into the trunk, creating an open-air experience that's perfect for cruising on a warm summer day. And according to the seller, the electric window is fully functional, so you can enjoy that breezeway breeze with just the touch of a button. Under the hood, that rebuilt 390 V8 is sure to provide plenty of power and performance. The Monterey was never a lightweight, but with a big block like that, you'll have no trouble keeping up with modern traffic. And with an automatic transmission, driving this classic is as easy as can be. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $12,500 or best offer for this Monterey, which might seem a bit steep at first glance. But when you consider the excellent condition, the recent rebuild, and the rare breezeway feature, it starts to look like a pretty solid deal. This is the kind of car that you could enjoy for years to come, and it's sure to turn heads and start conversations wherever you go. Of course, as with any classic car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1964 Mercury Monterey Breezeway looks like an absolute winner. 8. We've got a real treat for you. A 1985 Chevrolet El Camino that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic beauty is the perfect blend of a truck and a car, and it's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the condition of this El Camino. The seller rates it as good, and based on the description, it sounds like they've taken great care of it over the years. The car was originally from Florida, which means it's likely been spared from the harsh winter weather that can take a toll on classic vehicles. And when it has been exposed to the cold, the seller has kept it safely tucked away in the garage. Under the hood, you'll find a 6-cylinder engine that the seller says runs great. They don't specify which engine it is, but based on the year and model, it's likely a 3.8L V6 or a 4.3L V6. Either way, you can expect decent power and reliability from this classic power plant. The exterior of the car is finished in a beautiful two-tone blue and white paint job that's all original. The seller doesn't mention any rust or major damage, which is a great sign for a car of this age. And with features like a moonroof and refurbished ceiling trim, this El Camino has some nice touches that set it apart from the crowd. Inside, you'll find a clean and well-maintained interior with manual crank windows and a new digital stereo system. The seller even includes the original stereo as well, which is a nice bonus for those who appreciate a bit of nostalgia. You'll also get power steering, heat, and air conditioning, making this El Camino a comfortable cruiser for those long summer drives. Now, let's talk about the mileage. The odometer shows just over 8,000 miles, which seems incredibly low for a car that's almost 40 years old. However, it's possible that the odometer has rolled over or that the car has undergone an engine swap at some point in its life. Either way, it's worth asking the seller for more details on the car's history and maintenance records. As for the price, the seller is asking $12,800 for this El Camino. That might seem a bit steep for a car from the mid-80s, but when you consider the overall condition, the low mileage, and the unique features, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. These El Caminos have a dedicated following, and finding one in this condition is getting harder and harder as the years go by. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1985 Chevrolet El Camino looks like a real gem. 9. We've got a real blast from the past for you. A stunning 1978 Oldsmobile Cutlass that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. This classic beauty is up for sale at DJ Auto Sales in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And let me tell you, it looks like an absolute dream. First off, can we talk about the condition of this Cutlass? The seller rates it as excellent, and based on the description, I'm inclined to believe them. With just under 68,000 miles on the odometer, this car has been well maintained and cared for over the years. It's rare to find a classic like this in such great shape, and that alone makes it worth a closer look. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide plenty of oomph when you need it. The Cutlass was known for its smooth ride and effortless acceleration, and this one looks like it's ready to deliver on that promise. With a rear-wheel drive setup and an automatic transmission, this car is the perfect blend of classic style and modern convenience. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but what about financing? Well, DJ Auto Sales has you covered there too. They offer a variety of financing options for all kinds of credit situations, from bad credit to no credit to first-time buyers. They work with dozens of lenders to get you approved fast, so you can drive off the lot in your new, to you, Cutlass without any hassle. And if you're worried about the longevity of your new ride, DJ Auto Sales has you covered there too. They offer competitive extended warranties that will give you peace of mind and protection for your investment. Plus, if you've got an old car to trade in, they'll give you a great discount on your new purchase. Now, let's talk about the price. At $14,500, this Cutlass isn't exactly a bargain basement find. But when you consider the excellent condition, the low mileage, and the financing options available, it starts to look like a pretty solid investment. These classic Oldsmobiles have a dedicated following, and finding one in this condition is getting harder and harder as the years go by. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1978 Oldsmobile Cutlass looks like a real winner. So what do you think, folks? Is this Cutlass worth the asking price? Would you rock that classic style and cruise around town in this beauty? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're in the Cedar Rapids area, why not swing by DJ Auto Sales and take this Cutlass for a spin? With financing options and extended warranties available, it might just be the perfect addition to your garage. 10. We've got a real piece of American muscle car history up for grabs on Craigslist, a 1965 Ford Mustang. This classic pony car is the stuff of legends, and it's looking for a new owner who can give it the love and attention it deserves. Now let's be real. This Mustang isn't a show car. The seller rates the condition as good, but they're upfront about the fact that it's going to need some work. The interior needs new upholstery, the brakes need attention, and it's going to need a new radiator. But hey, that's all part of the fun of owning a classic car, right? Under the hood, you'll find a factory 289 V8 engine with a 4-barrel carburetor. That's the A-code engine, which was a step up from the base model and offered a bit more power. Paired with a factory 4-speed manual transmission, this Mustang is sure to be a blast to drive once it's back in top shape. The seller mentions that the car has been sitting for many years, but it does run and drive. That's a good sign, and it means that you won't have to start from scratch with this project. The floor pans and trunk are rust-free, which is a big plus for any classic car. And with brand new tires, a new fuel pump, and a new gas tank, some of the major mechanical components have already been addressed. Now let's talk about the cosmetics. The paint and body are going to need some work, but that's to be expected on a car that's over 50 years old. The seller includes all the extra parts and chrome, which is great news for anyone looking to restore this Mustang to its former glory. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,700. That might seem a bit steep for a car that needs work, but when you consider the rarity and desirability of a 1965 Mustang, it starts to make sense. These cars have a huge following, and finding one with a factory V8 and manual transmission is getting harder and harder. Of course, as with any project car, it's important to do your due diligence before making a purchase. Get a thorough inspection, ask lots of questions, and be realistic about the amount of work and money it's going to take to get this Mustang back in top shape. But if you're up for the challenge and have a love for classic American muscle, this 1965 Ford Mustang could be the perfect project for you. Just imagine cruising down the road in this iconic pony car, turning heads and leaving a trail of envious onlookers in your wake. So what do you think, folks? Is this Mustang worth the asking price? Would you take on the challenge of restoring this classic to its former glory? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're in the market for a vintage Mustang, why not give this one a closer look? With some elbow grease and a bit of love, it could be the car of your dreams. 11. We've got a classic 1982 Chevrolet Camaro up for grabs on Craigslist. And let me tell you, this one is a real head-turner. If you're looking for a vintage muscle car with plenty of charm and character, this might just be the ride for you. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as good, which is a solid starting point for any classic car. They mention that the original paint is faded, but that's to be expected on a car that's almost 40 years old. The important thing is that the underside of the car and the engine compartment are clean, which suggests that this Camaro has been well cared for over the years. Speaking of the engine, this Camaro is packing a 305 cubic inch V8 under the hood. That's a classic small block Chevy motor that's known for its reliability and easy maintenance. Paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, this car is sure to be a blast to drive. There's nothing quite like rowing your own gears in a vintage muscle car, and this Camaro delivers that experience in spades. The seller also mentions that the car hasn't been driven much in the winter or rain, which is great news for anyone worried about rust or corrosion. The original exhaust is clean, and the car has newer front calipers and pads, as well as rear cylinders and shoes. That means you won't have to worry about any major brake work right off the bat. Inside, the interior is said to be in good shape, which is always a plus on a car of this age. The T-tops are a classic Camaro feature, and the seller notes that they don't leak, another common problem area on these cars. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the mileage. At 195,000 miles, this Camaro has certainly seen some use over the years. But here's the thing, these cars were built to last, and with proper maintenance and care, they can easily go well beyond 200,000 miles. The fact that this one is still running strong is a testament to its durability and the care it's received from its previous owners. As for the price, the seller is asking $10,500. That might seem a bit steep for a car with this many miles, but when you consider the overall condition, The desirable features like the manual transmission and T-tops, and the undeniable cool factor of a classic Camaro, it starts to make sense. These cars have a devoted following, and finding a well-maintained example like this one is getting harder and harder as the years go by. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1982 Chevrolet Camaro looks like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a vintage muscle car. So what do you think, folks? Is this Camaro worth the asking price? Would you rock those T-tops and hit the open road in this classic beauty? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're in the market for a vintage ride with plenty of character, why not give this Camaro a closer look? With a little bit of TLC, it could be the car of your dreams. 12. We've got a real gem for you, a 1966 Mercury Monterey Breezeway that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This vintage beauty is a true time capsule, and it's looking for a new owner who appreciates its classic style and potential for customization. First off, let's talk about the engine. Under the hood, you'll find a 390 CI V8 with 275 horsepower and a 2-barrel carburetor. That's a lot of power for a car of this era, and the seller mentions that the engine was replaced by the dealership at 75,000 miles. That means the current engine has only 75,000 miles on it, which is relatively low for a car that's over 50 years old. The seller rates the condition of the car as good, and based on the description, it sounds like it's been well maintained over the years. The body and interior are said to be in perfect condition, thanks in part to some recent work by Max Upholstery in Seattle and a local body shop. The seats have been reupholstered with the original fabric, and any rusted metal has been replaced with fresh steel. The paint is a factory-correct ice blue poly, which looks stunning on this classic sedan. But here's where things get really interesting. The seller mentions that this Monterey is a prime candidate for a resto mod, lowrider, or classic restoration. With its solid bones and updated mechanicals, you could take this car in any direction you want. Drop in a modern performance V8, slam it on some airbags, or keep it stock and enjoy its vintage charm. The choice is yours. The seller has made some smart upgrades to the car's systems too. The old points ignition has been replaced with a more reliable electronic system, and the carburetor has been rebuilt. The fuel tank and lines have also been flushed, which is an important maintenance item on a car of this age. The tires are said to have only a few thousand miles on them, and the brakes are in good shape. One of the coolest features of this Monterey is the breezeway rear window, a unique design that allows the back glass to retract into the trunk, creating an open-air feel. The seller notes that the window is in working order, which is a big plus. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $9,000 or best offer, which might seem a bit steep for a car that's not in perfect condition. But when you consider the rarity of this model, the solid foundation it provides for a custom build, and the recent maintenance and upgrades, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1966 Mercury Monterey Breezeway looks like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a vintage cruiser with plenty of potential. So what do you think, folks? Is this Monterey worth the asking price? Would you keep it classic or go wild with a custom build? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're ready to make an offer, you'd better act fast. The seller says the best offer takes it away, and I have a feeling this one won't last long. 13. We've got a real treat for you. A 1973 Chevrolet Impala that's up for grabs on Craigslist. And let me tell you, this is not your average vintage ride. This Impala is in absolutely stunning condition, and it's ready to hit the road with a new owner behind the wheel. First off, can we talk about those original miles? Just 73,000 on the odometer. That's incredibly low for a car that's almost 50 years old. It's clear that this Impala has been very well maintained over the years, and the seller even goes so far as to rate its condition as like new. That's a bold claim, but based on the description and the photos, it seems like it might just be true. Under the hood, you'll find a classic Chevy 8-cylinder engine that's said to run amazingly well. The seller mentions that the engine bay is super clean, which is always a good sign. It suggests that this car has been loved and cared for by someone who really knows their stuff. The interior is also said to be completely original, which is a real rarity on a car of this age. The seller doesn't go into a ton of detail, but they do say that everything works as it should. That's music to any classic car enthusiast's ears. There's nothing worse than a vintage ride with a bunch of broken or missing parts. But here's the real kicker. The seller says that this Impala is a daily driver. That means it's not just some garage queen that's been sitting around collecting dust. This car is ready to hit the road and take you wherever you want to go, whether that's a quick trip to the grocery store or a cross-country road trip. And with a solid undercarriage and a clean title, you can buy with confidence, knowing that this car is in great shape inside and out. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $12,500, which might seem a bit steep at first glance. But when you consider the incredible condition of this car, the low original miles, and the fact that it's a daily driver, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. These vintage Impalas are getting harder and harder to find in this kind of shape, and they've got a dedicated following among classic car enthusiasts. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. But based on what I'm seeing in the ad, this 1973 Chevrolet Impala looks like an absolute gem. So what do you think, folks? Is this Impala worth the asking price? Would you daily drive this classic beauty, or keep it tucked away in the garage for special occasions? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're in the Chicago area and in the market for a vintage ride that's ready to roll, you'd better act fast. Something tells me this one won't be around for long. 14. We've got a real piece of American automotive history up for grabs on Craigslist, a 1962 Ford Thunderbird. This iconic ride has been turning heads for over 60 years, and now it could be yours for the taking. First things first, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as good, which is a solid starting point for any classic car. However, it's important to note that the title status is listed as salvage. That means this T-Bird has likely been in an accident or sustained some serious damage at some point in its life. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's definitely something to keep in mind as you consider making an offer. Under the hood, you'll find the original 390 V8 engine, which is a real powerhouse. These engines are known for their smooth power delivery and classic Ford sound, and the seller mentions that this one runs and drives great. That's a big plus, as getting a vintage car up and running can sometimes be a real challenge. The seller has made some nice upgrades to this T-Bird too. It's got front disc brakes for improved stopping power, an electric distributor for more reliable ignition, and a new kit front suspension for a smoother ride. The paint is also said to be custom, which suggests that this car has been well loved and cared for over the years. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the odometer. The seller notes that it's broken, which means we don't know the true mileage of this car. That's not uncommon on vehicles of this age, but it does add an element of uncertainty to the purchase. The seller lists the mileage as 142,000, but without a working odometer, it's impossible to say for sure. As for the price, the seller is asking $8,500. That's a fair bit of cash for a car with a salvage title and an unknown true mileage. However, when you consider the rarity and desirability of these early 60s Thunderbirds, it starts to make a bit more sense. These cars have a dedicated following, and finding one that runs and drives as well as this one is getting harder and harder as the years go by. Of course, as with any classic car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a final decision. A salvage title can sometimes be hiding more serious issues, so it's important to know exactly what you're getting into. But if you're willing to take on a bit of a project and you've got a soft spot for vintage Fords, this 1962 Thunderbird could be a real gem. With its classic styling, powerful V8 engine, and custom upgrades, it's the kind of car that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. So what do you think, folks? Is this T-Bird worth the asking price? Would you take a chance on a salvage title for the opportunity to own a piece of automotive history? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're ready to make an offer, you'd better act fast. Something tells me this one won't be around for long. 15. I've got a real treat for you. A 1962 Chevrolet Corvair 900 Monza convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $10,900. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What's the catch? But let me tell you, this classic beauty is the real deal. First off, let's talk about that engine. Under the hood, you'll find a 145 CI Turbo Air Flat 6, paired with a 4-speed manual transaxle. And let me tell you, this thing is running like a dream. The seller even mentions that recent work includes a tune-up with carb and ignition balancing, so you know it's been well taken care of. Now, I know the seller mentions a few minor issues like a loose driver's side door handle and a non-working windshield washer pump, but hey, that's just part of the charm of owning a classic car, right? And sure, there might be a dent in the left rear quarter panel, but that's nothing a little TLC can't fix. But let's talk about the real star of the show here, that gorgeous yellow paint job. Sure, it might not be the original Twilight Blue that it left the factory with, but who cares? This thing is a head turner no matter what color it is. And with that brand new white convertible soft top, you'll be cruising in style all summer long. Inside, you'll find a cozy aqua vinyl interior that's just begging for you to take it for a spin. The seller even replaced the armrests and mounts, so you know they've put some love into this car. And with features like a cue ball shift knob and a push-button AM radio, you'll feel like you've stepped right back into the 60s. Now, I know the odometer only shows 34K miles, and the seller admits that the total mileage is unknown. But with a car this cool, does it really matter? This thing is all about the journey, not the destination. So if you're in the market for a classic convertible that's sure to turn heads and make all your friends jealous, look no further than this 1962 Chevrolet Corvair 900 Monza. With a clean registration and title in hand, 2 sets of keys, and some accessories included, this is a deal you won't want to miss. Trust me. You'll be the talk of the town cruising around in this beauty. So, what are you waiting for? Go check it out before someone else snatches it up. 16. I've got a real gem for you. A 1977 Ford Ranchero GT Brougham that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $7,900. And let me tell you, this thing is a real head turner. First off, let's talk about that engine. Under the hood, you'll find a beefy 350-1M V8. Paired with an automatic transmission. And according to the seller, this thing runs and drives like a dream. They even mentioned that there's been a ton of recent work done, including a new heater core and a rebuilt front end. So you know this Ranchero is ready to hit the road. Now, I know some of you might be a little bummed about the lack of AC, but hey, that's just part of the charm of owning a classic car. And with heat that works great, you'll be plenty comfortable cruising around on those cooler evenings. But let's talk about the real selling point here, the condition of this beauty. The seller mentions that there's no rust at all, which is a real rarity for a car of this age. And with mostly original paint and interior, you know this Ranchero has been well taken care of over the years. Plus, with those old school Kragers and true dual exhaust, this thing looks and sounds the part of a true classic. Now, I know the mileage might be a little higher than some of you are looking for, with the seller mentioning that it's in excess of mechanical limits, but with maintenance logs dating back to 1990 and a clean AZ title, you can rest assured that this Ranchero has been properly cared for. And if you're worried about financing or trade-ins, don't be. The seller is welcoming both, so you can make this Ranchero yours no matter what your current situation is. So if you're in the market for a classic car that's sure to turn heads and make all your friends jealous, look no further than this 1977 Ford Ranchero GT Brougham. With its powerful engine, stunning condition, and affordable price tag, this is a deal you won't want to miss. Trust me, you'll be the talk of the town cruising around in this beauty. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out before someone else snatches it up. 17. I've got a real treat for you today. A gorgeous 1969 green hardtop Mustang that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $9,000. And let me tell you, this thing is a real beauty. First off, let's talk about that engine. Under the hood, you'll find the original 302 2V engine, which is a real rarity for a car of this age. And according to the seller, this thing runs like a dream. The seller's father-in-law purchased it from Country Classic Cars in Illinois back in 2020 and had some mechanical work done right off the bat, so you know it's been well taken care of. Now, I know the seller mentions a few blemishes on the exterior paint and some TLC needed for the interior, but hey, that's just part of the charm of owning a classic car. And honestly, with a car this cool, a few imperfections just add to its character. But let's talk about the real selling point here, the fact that this Mustang is a true classic. I mean, just look at those lines. The hardtop design is timeless, and that green paint job is sure to turn heads wherever you go. Plus, with only 51,038 miles on the odometer, this thing has plenty of life left in it. Now, I know the seller is asking $9,000 OBO, which might seem a little steep for some. But trust me, for a car of this caliber, that's a steal. The seller is entertaining reasonable offers, so if you're serious about making this Mustang yours, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. And if you're worried about the paperwork, don't be. The seller mentions that the car has a clean title, so you can rest assured that everything is on the up and up. So if you're in the market for a classic Mustang that's sure to turn heads and make all your friends jealous, look no further than this 1969 green hardtop. With its original engine, stunning design, and affordable price tag, this is a deal you won't want to miss. Trust me, you'll be the talk of the town cruising around in this beauty. But don't just take my word for it. Go see it for yourself. The seller is asking serious inquiries only to text them at 434-352-1628 to arrange a time to come check it out. So what are you waiting for? Go make this Mustang yours before someone else snatches it up. 18, I've got a real gem for you. A 1964 Ford Fairlane two-door hardtop that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $7,000. Now I know what you might be thinking, what's the catch? But let me tell you, this thing is a real diamond in the rough. First off, let's talk about the condition of this beauty. The seller mentions that it's a very straight, preserved car that hasn't lived outside since the 80s. That's right. This Fairlane has been garaged its whole life, which is a real rarity for a car of this age. And with good glass and rubber all around, you know this thing is solid. Now, I know the seller mentions that this is a project car, but don't let that scare you off. The transition to a Thunderbolt is already well underway, with much of the work already done in the engine compartment. And with over $2,000 worth of Kreitz performance necessities included, like an aluminum radiator, headers, and weld-in frame connectors, you'll be well on your way to having a real beast of a machine. But let's talk about the real selling point here, the fact that every piece of trim is included. That's right, no need to scour eBay for missing parts. This Fairlane is complete and ready for you to put your own personal touch on it. Now, I know the odometer is broken, so the actual mileage is unknown. But with a car this cool, does it really matter? This thing is all about the journey, not the destination. And if you're worried about getting it home, don't be. The seller mentions that it's trailerable, so you can easily transport it to your garage and get to work on making it your own. So if you're in the market for a classic Fairlane that's ready for you to put your own personal touch on, look no further than this 1964 two-door hardtop. With its solid condition, included performance parts, and complete trim, this is a deal you won't want to miss. Trust me, with a little elbow grease and some TLC, this thing will be the talk of the town. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out before someone else snatches it up. 19. I've got a real piece of American muscle car history for you. A 1972 Chevrolet Corvette T-Top Coupe that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $15,000. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What's the catch? And I'll be honest with you, this thing needs some work. But for the right enthusiast, this could be the project of a lifetime. First off, let's talk about the condition of this classic. The seller admits that the engine needs an overhaul and that the car is currently in non-running condition. But don't let that scare you off. This Corvette is a true survivor, with all its original glory still intact. From the black leather interior to the factory options like air conditioning, power steering, and power windows, this thing is loaded with desirable features. But let's talk about what really makes this Corvette special: the fact that it's a 1972 model. As the seller mentions, this was the last year to feature both front and rear chrome bumpers, a bright egg crate grille, side fender grills, and a removable rear window. This car has the status of being known as the end-of-the-era model, which makes it a true collector's item. Now, I know the seller mentions that the interior and trim need some minor repairs, but that's to be expected with a car of this age. And with no signs or history of any accidents, you can rest assured that this Corvette has been well taken care of over the years. But let's talk about the real selling point here: the potential for this car to be brought back to its former glory. With some elbow grease and a little TLC, this Corvette could be a real head-turner, and with all its original features still intact, you'll be able to enjoy the true classic American sports car experience. So if you're a classic American muscle car enthusiast looking for a project to sink your teeth into, look no further than this 1972 Chevrolet Corvette T-Top Coupe. With its original interior, loaded factory options, and end-of-an-era status, this is a fantastic opportunity to own a piece of automotive history. And at just $15,000, it's a steal compared to what a fully restored example would cost. But don't just take my word for it, go see it for yourself. With a little imagination and some hard work, this Corvette could be the pride and joy of your garage. So what are you waiting for? Go make this classic yours before someone else snatches it up. 20. I've got a real treat for you. A stunning 1963 Chrysler Imperial that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $12,000. And let me tell you, this thing is a true beauty. First off, let's talk about the history and prestige of the Chrysler Imperial. Introduced way back in 1926, the Imperial has always been Chrysler's top-of-the-line vehicle, rivaling the likes of Cadillac, Lincoln, and even Duesenberg. And from 1955 onwards, the Imperial became a standalone brand, synonymous with luxury and prestige. I mean, just the name Imperial itself signifies something sovereign, supreme, and of unusual excellence. It's the perfect fit for Chrysler's highest-priced model. Now let's talk about this particular 1963 Chrysler Imperial. The seller mentions that it's in good condition and has been well preserved over the years. And with fresh, new paint, this thing is ready to turn heads wherever you go. Can you imagine rolling up to a classic car show in this beauty? You'll be the talk of the town. But it's not just about looks with this Imperial. With only 108,000 miles on the odometer, this car has plenty of life left in it. And with an automatic transmission, it's a breeze to drive. Whether you're a collector, enthusiast, or just someone who appreciates the elegance of vintage automobiles, this Imperial is a gem that shouldn't be missed. Now, I know $12,000 might seem like a lot of money for a classic car, but when you consider the history and prestige of the Chrysler Imperial, it's actually a steal. These cars are becoming increasingly rare, and finding one in such good condition is a real treat. So if you're in the market for a classic American luxury car that's sure to turn heads and make all your friends jealous, Look no further than this 1963 Chrysler Imperial. With its stunning new paint job, well-preserved condition, and affordable price tag, this is a deal you won't want to miss. But don't just take my word for it, go see it for yourself. The seller is inviting interested buyers to contact them to schedule a viewing or for more details. And trust me, once you see this beauty in person, you'll be hooked. So what are you waiting for? Go make this 1963 Chrysler Imperial yours before someone else snatches it up. It's a piece of automotive history that you'll cherish for years to come.